Africa's resource-richest countries struggle with the brutal reality. They extract goods, export it raw, and the wealth goes elsewhere. This leads us to one of Africa's latest infrastructure projects, the $1.5 billion Lobito Corridor, a trade route connecting Angola, Zambia, and the DRC. But will this project finally create a long-term value for Africa, or just speed up the same old story of extraction? The Lobito Corridor is a trade route that connects Angola's port of Lobito on the Atlantic Ocean with the copper and cobalt-rich regions of Zambia and the Democratic Republic of Congo, or the DRC. The backbone of the corridor is the Benguela Railway, a line that stretches 1,300 kilometers inland from Lobito. It was built by the Portuguese during colonial times, and its original purpose was clear: extract resources from Africa's interior and ship them to Europe. After years of conflict, Angola rebuilt the railway with the help of Chinese companies, and in 2023 the government handed a 30-year concession to a group of European companies. These companies are now responsible for running and improving the railway. The promise they're giving is to help countries like the DRC and Zambia, which are landlocked, get their minerals to the ocean faster and more efficiently. Until now, most exports had to go through Tanzania or South Africa, which are often slow and congested. This corridor would give them a westward route. But if it's just about logistics, why is the West suddenly so interested in this project? So here's the real story of it. For years, China has been investing heavily in Africa through its Belt and Road Initiative. They have built railways, ports, highways, and many more things, and secured access to key mineral resources along the way. The West is only now catching up. In 2022, the US announced a $250 million investment in the Lobito Corridor through its global infrastructure program. The EU followed with funding through its Global Gateway Plan. Their message: this is about helping Africa. But the timing tells a different story. Western officials have openly said they want to reduce dependence on China and secure access to critical minerals for green technologies like electric vehicles and wind turbines. In other words, this isn't just about helping Africa to grow, it's about competing with China and securing the raw materials the West needs for its own future. So yes, this project might bring benefits, but let's be clear, this is a geopolitical race, and Africa once again is the battleground for a war between these superpowers. But here's where things get even more complicated. So far, most of the focus around the Lobito Corridor is on getting raw materials out of the continent, not on adding value to those resources before they leave. There are no confirmed plans for smelters, refineries, or industrial zones along the route. No binding requirements to create jobs for local communities or help African countries move up the value chain. In fact, it feels a lot like history is repeating itself right here. And civil society voices in Zambia and the DRC are asking the hard questions. Why are we still exporting copper and cobalt in raw form? Why not build industries here that process and transform those minerals so the profits finally stay local? And even the governments are raising concerns. The DRC has moved to ban the exports of unrefined cobalt. Angola says it wants to diversify beyond oil. Zambia's president talked about building local industries. But so far, the corridor's plans haven't really reflected these priorities. And let's not forget, the companies running this new corridor are also all foreign. And that's not automatically bad, but without clear accountability, there's a real risk that most of the profits will leave the country while local communities get left behind once again. And that brings us to a bigger point, one rooted in Africa's long history with extractive infrastructure. Africa has seen this before. Railways built to extract, pipelines laid to move oil and gas, not to power African homes, but fueled industries abroad. The Chad-Cameroon pipeline, Mozambique's coal routes, the Congo Ocean Railway, always sold as game changers but ended in big disappointment. Why? Because they were designed with one goal, and that is get the raw material out. They rarely include long-term plans for local jobs, industrial development, or sustainability, and they often come with serious side effects: environmental damage, forced displacement, and debt burdens for the countries they've been built in. The fear is that the Lobito Corridor might go the same way. It's being built fast, backed by foreign companies, and focused on mineral exports. Unless something changes, it could become just another superhighway for raw materials to leave Africa, while people along the route see little benefits. But the thing is, it doesn't need to be that way. Across the continent, things are slowly changing. Countries like the DRC, Ghana, and Namibia are starting to say enough. They are passing laws to ban or limit the export of unprocessed raw materials. They want local factories, local jobs, and more control over their own economies. In 2023, the DRC's Ministry of Mines said it wants to stop exports of raw cobalt and copper concentrate altogether. Zambia's president has echoed the same message. It's time to add value before exporting. But here's the challenge. The Lobito Corridor, as it's currently designed, doesn't fit this new version at all. If countries start enforcing value addition policies, this then might require renegotiations with operators. Investors might pull back, or worse, governments might feel pressured to roll back their own ambitions just to keep the trains running. This is the crossroad Africa now faces. Follow the old model of extraction and foreign dependency, or push for a new model even if it means tougher negotiations and slower growth in the short term for long-term goals. And there's one more layer to the story, and this is geopolitics. Western governments say they want to give Africa a better alternative to China. But let's be honest, that choice is still being shaped by outsiders. For years, many Western countries deprioritized African infrastructure investment, especially compared to China's aggressive engagement. And they even criticized China's investments but didn't offer their own support. Now when critical minerals are at stake, they suddenly are all in. And while Western officials talk about trust and transparency, the deals being signed, including the Lobito Corridor, aren't always public. Communities don't know what's being promised or what their share of the deal in reality really is. In the end, it feels less like a choice between two different visions and more like a decision between two versions of the same system, one led by Beijing and the other by Washington and Brussels. And neither one truly centers African ownership. But it's still not too late. The Lobito Corridor could be more than just a fast track for cobalt and copper. It could be a real engine for transformation, if governments, civil society, and international partners choose to make it that way. But what needs to happen to make that possible? I think governments must negotiate better terms. Any long-term infrastructure projects should include commitments to build local industry and not just tracks and ports. If you're moving minerals, there should be processing facilities and training centers nearby. Let the value stay where the resources come from. And communities here also need a seat at the table. That means full transparency. People should know what's being built, who's profiting, and what the environmental and social costs might be. Accountability only happens when the citizens and the locals are also informed. Western partners must walk the talk. If the US and the EU say they care about African development, they need to show it. And not just with dollars, but with the power sharing, capacity building, and long-term commitment. That means supporting local ownership and not just corporate control. And finally, we need to redefine what success actually looks like. Not just how many tons of copper were exported, but how many new jobs were created, how many local businesses grew, how much wealth stayed on the African continent. The Lobito Corridor is more than just a railway. It's a test of whether Africa can write a different story this time. A story where infrastructure doesn't just extract, where it empowers, where foreign investment doesn't just build, it shares, where governments and communities have real power to shape their own future and not just adapt to someone else's plans. This corridor could be that story, or it could be another missed opportunity for the continent. The choice is still open, but it has to be made now before the tracks are laid and the deals are locked in entirely. And now let me know down below in the comments what you think about the corridor. If it's really a new opportunity or if it's just more of the same. My name is Marvin, and over 2 years ago I moved from Germany to Kenya, and ever since I've been exploring life, business, and everything that really shapes the future of the African continent. I appreciate you watching a lot, and I see you in the next one.